What's up, people? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin Masundiri. I'm a filmmaker based in Vancouver, BC. I've been doing this for the past 5 years. Today we'll be talking about, is the Sony FX3 still worth it in 2026? I got the Sony FX3 in 2023, 2022, and it's been with me since then. The reason that I even bought it was just back then when I used to look at YouTubers, a popular camera was the Sony A7S3 or A7S2. I don't really remember the name of it. It essentially has the same sensor as the Sony FX3, but that one was more dedicated to photography. It's more of a hybrid camera compared to this one, which is set up as a cinema camera. I think in the last 2 years, the definition of cinema cameras or budget-friendly cinema cameras has changed, because there's been so much cameras that have come out in the price range that do the same thing, some at a cheaper price, some at the same price but with better features than the Sony FX3. And I've seen online forums, I've seen online people making videos on which camera you should get, why you should get that camera. One thing that disappointed me is a lot of people who influenced me to actually get the Sony FX3 ended up switching and going to either it's the Blackmagic Pick 6 or whatever. But ultimately, the thing I had to learn is, with this content game, right, it's just content. It's about views. A lot of people, they don't actually really use these cameras for that. I remember one of the people I was following, when they made a video and they're like, oh, I'm now interested in going into narrative. And I was like, wait, what? What have we been talking about the past few years? I thought you were a cinematographer, but you soon realize a lot of people just make content. So for them, it's about views. Going back to the topic at hand, is the Sony FX3 worth it in 2026? Yeah, I would say it is for its own, for what it does, for the features that it has, the things that made it perfect a few years ago when it came out. It still does those things. For me, it's the low light performance. I like filming dark and moody things. It's just the cinema that influenced me in the last 10 years. I don't normally find myself filming in areas where there's not much light, so I don't necessarily need to push it to the 12.8. But the one thing that I've learned, I don't know if you guys watched this film called the one with Timothée Chalamet where he was singing. In that movie, they pushed the Sony Venice to 12.8 to create a look for the film, and that's just because the digital sensor could allow them to do that. That's something that this camera can do, which is something that they did on the movie called, I'm forgetting the name, with Denzel Washington's son, John David Washington. In that movie, they were using it at the higher base ISO and then using small lights to help feel the frame. And essentially, you have a lot of these practical lights lighting the frame because the ISO is so sensitive. So with that, it comes with those features that you can do, but also other cameras can do that. So I feel like in 2026, when you're making your decision, it's not necessarily to say I'm going to go buy the Sony FX3. You can go buy the Panasonic, you can go buy the Blackmagic, you can go buy a Red. I believe Red was recently, like, they reshuffled the pricing to make it competitive at this rate. So it's like you have a variety of options, and I think your decision making when it comes to buying a camera, especially with budget, is no longer a problem. It becomes more of the color science behind each camera, which with good color grading also doesn't really matter. So it's more about workflow. If you're someone like me who's invested in a lot of Sony stuff, you may just want to buy Sony cameras so that you stay in the ecosystem, but also the adapters. So it's not really an argument to hold on to. But the main reason I still use Sony is I just love the color science, and it's something that my eye is now trained. I know as soon as my footage is in DaVinci, what I need to do, especially to balance it, is something that I'm used to. I remember a year ago, I was filming on a Blackmagic, and the image was so magenta, and I didn't know how to fix it. Like, it was a struggle. I'm like, this is not something that I do. I'm not a colorist by profession. I'm a DOP, right? So those are some of the things that you want to think about. It has, for me, I feel like it's so rugged. Like, this camera has fallen down. I've picked it up. I've been with it in the water. It still works. They're constantly making updates on the Sony website that you can put in the camera, which makes it better and better. it matches up well with other Sony cameras before it and after it. You know, if you have Venice, you can use this as a supporting camera. I've seen some people where they were filming in an ARRI and they were using the Sony. So it's something that is possible. It's not that it's impossible. So like if you are thinking, or if you're on the fence of buying it, I would say right now one of the challenges may have is they may announce a Sony FX4. They may do that because last year they just announced the Sony FX2. So it's something that now you're just playing, you know, hopscotch. But then that's up to you. You know, it's a matter of playing dice. If you ask me what's the reason I still use it, is because as a camera I own, I don't necessarily want to go out and spend $5,000 extra on something that I don't need, and then what do I do with this one, you know? But as I'll always say, is my next camera after this one is likely going to be a Sony Burano, because I feel like that's just the jump that you need to make. The Sony FX6 catches my eye because of the internal ND. That's a disadvantage the FX3 has, because when you're using those circular variable NDs, I feel like sometimes they change the color of the image. Also, you realize with those things is they're flimsy. Sometimes they'll get stuck on your lens, and it just becomes a problem, especially when you're trying to get work done. So not having those internal NDs is a big challenge, and you start to appreciate it, especially with just lighting techniques that you're trying to implement, right? Like, it's very difficult to be inside and then you're doing the circular thing. Whereas if you had an internal ND, you can just by the flick of a button, move it up and see what's happening. And also sometimes, like I remember when I was using the Sony FX3 and it has this automatic ND section where you like, when you're filming something, let's say you're handheld in the house and you're going outside, you have those transitional shots and it's smooth, you know, there's not much to worry about. So in those instances where you started thinking about, oh, maybe the alternatives might be better, you know, but that's a matter of what ecosystem do you like. I feel like in this day and age, it's just a matter of workflow and choice and what do you like when things are short, like when you look at them, do I like how this thing looks like or do I not? You know, I think that is the most important, especially when you put a cinema lens onto any camera. It just, like, the things the iPhone can do now is ridiculous, you know? So it then becomes a matter of what's your image pipeline. So if you're on the fence of buying the Sony FX3, I'll say go for it if you have the funds, or buy something, an alternative. You know, cameras are no longer a reason not to be filming, you know, it's just an excuse. And the sad part is a lot of people buy these cameras and don't even know what to do with them. And I think it's more important learning what you want to do with the camera before you buy it, or even when you buy it, use it. And push it to the limit. If you don't like it, put it on Facebook Marketplace. Somebody will buy it off you and you go buy something that you like. With that said, guys, smash that subscribe button and I'll be seeing you in the next one.